travels in Southeast Asia, but that doesn't look like it's going to be published anytime soon. Now, it turns out that what we call our kingfisher, the common kingfisher, is one of the commonest kingfishers in the world. It stretches all the way from Ireland to Japan. You can see it all across the Northern Hemisphere, apart from in America, where you will largely see this larger kingfisher. This is a belted kingfisher, and it caused a lot of excitement in England last year. One turned up in Lancashire and Yorkshire, I think, and stayed for quite a long time, flown all the way across the Atlantic. This one is even tinier than our kingfisher. This is a malachite kingfisher. And I sketched this in Senegal in West Africa. And the other commonest kingfisher in the world is this one, called a pied kingfisher. You'll find that in everywhere from Turkey and Israel to India, Sri Lanka, and Africa. Certainly the commonest kingfisher in Africa. It's very active. It hovers very rapidly over the water. Most kingfishers hover, but they can also fish from a perch, looking down into the water. And as their name suggests, they largely live on fish. Although I've seen kingfishers here catching prawns in the rock pools. So this is an illustration from the Asian book with a Scops owl, a kingfisher, and a type of pigeon. And this is an illustration from a Turkish magazine that was called Turquoise. And these two kingfishers, this is the white-breasted kingfisher or Smyrna kingfisher and the pied kingfishers. And this is a place called Dalyan in southwest Turkey on the Aegean, an absolutely beautiful place. Things like flamingos and all sorts of other birds and birds like hoopoes. But it's the first place going east that you can see all three kingfishers that we find in Europe and Asia. So what we're going to be doing is drawing a kingfisher. Now, the first thing you'll notice, you've all been sent the black and white drawing here. The first thing you'll notice here is that this kingfisher has a longer beak. Kingfishers, adult kingfishers have slightly longer beaks than young ones. You'll also note the head shape is different because like virtually every bird has a crest on the top of its head, which can raise or lower. And so this is just the same shaped head as that, only the back of the crest has been raised up. Well, that's the, okay. So that's the end of that. And I'm going to turn over to my other camera now. If you could put me on main screen, please, Ben. I'm going to start drawing the kingfisher. So if you've got your pens and pencils ready. There you go. Ah. I'm not the speaker at the moment.
Right. Yeah, we can hear you and you're spotlighted. So I think we're good to go.
All right.
I can't see, I don't know what your screen's showing, but we can see you're spotlighted in.
I should be the only one on the screen at the moment.
Yeah, you're making up, yeah, you're the bulk of the screen. You're sort
right.
of 90% of the screen on my screen.
All right.
If anyone else has got any, if there's a problem for anyone else how they're seeing it, just if they put it in the chat. But yeah, as far as I can tell, we're at normal.
Right. Well, it's, yes. Now, when I click speaker, it goes to you, Jane. I'm not full screen.
Oh, right. I think you're full screen to that's probably your settings. If you're full screen to everybody else.
Right. No, I've got 3 settings: speaker, gallery, and full screen, and none of them are put in. I am now full screen. Thank you.
You're now
Yeah.
brilliant. Okay.
Sorry about that. There we are.
No, don't worry. I'm not
Right.
sure what
Well, these things.
technology we're all learning.
Well, yes. Okay, so I'm going to do the usual. So we're starting off. I say, don't be worried if you get the shapes wrong or whatever. You can draw over them. You can rub them out later. You can adjust them as we go along, because what I'm seeing is slightly different from what you are seeing. When I put my glasses on, okay. So we want an egg shape. Anything slightly egg shaped like that. So, and then you'll see that the head is a smaller egg shape, but sideways, and it overlaps the mane. So we should have something like that. I've already making that a little bit wider. I just rub that out. I say I don't exactly see what. And then we want to take a line vertically down through the egg shape, the head shape. Remember I said you can do the beak any slightly longer than the one in the black and white drawing. And then you'll see another long egg shape, elongated egg shape, which are the wings. Well, the wing, there's only one wing showing on the side here. So I have to keep wiping my nose. I've got a head cold and allergic rhinitis. I'm sure you're very interested in that. And then a bit of an egg shape down here. The tail on a kingfisher is quite short. Oh, where's that one gone? I've lost my kingfisher. Oh yeah. For those of you that weren't here earlier on, I'm actually showing you the size of a kingfisher here. This is an adult kingfisher that flew into a window near a little stream and is preserved with formaldehyde. That was about 20 years ago, so it's not a victim of bird flu. It's a victim of reflections on windows. Right, now the next thing to do is to get the eye in. And if you imagine a bit of a long triangle like that, the eye is going to fit in. Just do it loosely to begin with. The eye is going to fit into that gap. And then we want the beak slightly curving towards the end. Roughly the same width above and below. And taking a line, I'm going to rub this one out. Taking a line here, curve down like that. This wants to be a slightly fan-like shape. This is the blue, a sort of blue moustache that kingfishers have. Now it also has a reddy orange fan-like shape. coming out from the same point, like that. And between them is the white fan-like shape. Now you'll notice when you look at photographs of kingfishers, the white shape can be quite scrunched up or it could be quite open, depending on whether it's alert, its crest is up or its crown is down or whatever. So we're going to then smooth this off here. And the same here, but this has got to come down and lead into the breast. So just rub out the bits we don't need. Actually, I just realized I've done that. This needs to go up a little. Now the beak itself is covered by feathers here. These are called the laws. That's a little group of feathers. And here, where the blue moustache comes down. And here is the nostrils, which are quite narrow. To strengthen the top of that a bit. We'll just put a little bit of a crest on the back there so that it's not completely rounded, and smooth it down onto the back like that. So rub out the bits we don't need. Now the first, I'm going to do the eye. The eye is a very, very deep black, like a falcon's, but you always leave a little bit of white up at the top at the back. So if you do it with pencil, this is graphite. You can leave that little bit of white at the top there. You always see light reflected in bird's eyes, anybody's eyes, of course. Now when we look at the top of the head, the feathers are in lines, almost like parallel lines, and they stretch around and they come down on the blue as well. And they have, but I'm going to do them quite pale because we're going to put color over them. And when you put color over pencil, it can pick up some of the dark of the pencil, some of the graphite or the lead. And the same on the moustache. Just checking the right. Now we'll bring the wing down a little bit, and I'm going to rub the back of the wing off the top, as it were, because of that, and put like a little fringe, like a little shawl, because this bit is that incredible turquoise, which is just reflected light. So it can look everything from silver to blue or to bluey green. And that's the things about kingfishers. If you look at a lot of photographs, you'll see they're either bluey green or they're blue, depending on how the light is affecting them. Now, as with any other wing, I'll draw a wing here just to demonstrate. Wings have lines of scalloped feathers like tiles that they get bigger as they go down. The ones at the top are quite small, like this. Then they're getting bigger. They're all overlapping. They're all waterproof. And then finally, you get the biggest wing feathers of all, which are the secondaries. And they fold over the primaries. And we've shown this before on bird wings. So I'm going to draw a kingfisher wing here, which are not very pointed. And these are these feathers. These are the secondaries. And these are the secondary covers. They're called covers because they cover. I say they get smaller and smaller. And you get the primary covers. And then, as we've seen before with things like buzzards, there are usually 9 or 10 primary feathers overlapping, getting blunter and rounder. So down here, we've just got the ends of the primaries. Got the ends of the primaries sticking out down here. So I'm just going to do those concave shapes. They're getting bigger. And you can this is just to show you that a pattern, a tile-like pattern. And then the biggest ones of all, the secondaries, because they actually go up. These are called the scapulars. We want to be technical. Now, I'm going to ease off its belly a little. So rub that one out. Now, kingfishers usually sit on branches, but this one is going to be, it's going to be sat on the stones or rocks on the edge of the river. Now, the feet are really quite tiny, but all you will see really is just a little line like that. And they're going to be, they're bright scarlet. And that the tail. Now, this is the outside of the tail here, and this is the underside of the tail. We'll just give it a bit more of a chin. Again, the chin might, it could be fluffed out, or it be birds generally, when they're anxious or alert, they fluff the feathers in. When they're more relaxed, they fluff the feathers out. That's why the top of the head of a lot of birds will often look different. So touch those a little bit. Now I'm going to rub those out a little bit. As we're going to paint over them. As I can't see the chat, is everybody doing okay? Everybody catching up? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're okay. There's nothing in the chat.
Oh, good. Because I'm never quite sure if I'm going too fast for some people and too slow for others. Right. Right. Well, before we put the color on, tra-la, I'm just going to do a little. The beak is basically quite dark, but you don't want to do it completely black. To show, see, it has a sort of line of light, and then the bottom, the lower mandible, as they're called. In the female, there's orangey red at the base, the same orangey red as the breast. And the bit between the eye and the beak, this is sort of surrounded by dark feathers, but it's reddy orange in the middle there. So I put the dark in. This is graphite pencil, by the way. I'm using a stronger pencil than I would normally so that it shows up on the drawing. Now, are you ready for painting? Or pencils, colored pencils?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And what I'm going to use are a set of fairly cheap watercolors. And you noticed I've mixed a greeny blue and a bluey green and an orange already. And I'm going to use fairly ordinary brushes. You don't need fine brushes. These are number 8 and number 4, something like that. So the way that I do watercolor, which is I'm going to show you now, is to put the colors on quite thin and as dry as possible. You don't want to put a lot of water on because that will take a longer time to dry. And I like to build the color up in layers. So I'm going to start off with a bluey green and just go over all the shapes that are bluey green. I completely go over without doing any detail at all. Okay. Because you can also take paint off later. Right. So doing that as quickly as possible. Keep the edges It'll also show up differently on the screen as well, of course, depending on how you have your screen set. And doing it quickly as possible so that there are no hard edges. Smoothly as possible. The top is almost dried. You notice how this has got darker at the bottom. That's because the paint has also gone down on the slope as well as, but that's how I wanted it to look. Now for the back, remember that this is virtually impossible to paint this color. This really is the most incredible turquoise. I'm just going to fill that in from the top. And then put some water on the brush. And make it paler at the top. So on my screen, this is greener than the paints that I'm actually using. But that's probably my screen settings. Notice I've made it softer at the top. Sort of fades into the top. So I'm going to put some more details in later, but putting in to begin with what you could call the flat colors. Almost like an undercoat when you're painting walls. I'm using before I put this orange on, I'm going to rub out those bits there. Before I put this orange on, I'm going to wet the top here, wet the throat, so there's not a hard edge on the orange. And that's, again, I'm just filling that. Filling that space in. This is a bit like painting like by numbers. Wow. That's on my screen, it's a lot brighter than what I've actually done. I'm going to put some more color in. whilst it's still wet, so that it's stronger at the bottom. This is a psychedelic kingfisher. I'm going to wet that bit there as well. Put that bit of orange in there. You put too much colour on, you can just dab it off with tissue as well. And the cheek fan. And in that little, the laws. And it also goes on to the eye ring. I'm just going to try putting the light on to see if it, mine looks rather dark. Ah, that's slightly better, yes. Now that's, just wait for those to dry. Now I'm going to put a bit of black in, not very strong. I find that artists very rarely use pure black. We mix black with brown and blue and purple. So the most important thing is the eye. Remember to leave leaving that white highlight, and the beak again, not painting all the beak, leaving because the beak is like horn or nail, it reflects light. So you want to see the light shining on it. And then if you take most of the color off the brush, you can blend it into the beak. Now, if you've actually covered up black on the eye, there are two things you can do. The first one is to get a clean brush in clean water, but with very little water on it, and take some of the color off and then dab it. And that's not worked very well. It looks dirty on the screen. So the next thing you can do is to get a little blob of white paint and put that up there. And that black bit. Don't make the white bit too big. Now, mix a bit of red into the orange, and just roughly fill the feet in, so you can't see much of them. Little bit of dark, not very black, just to fill in the wingtips sticking out. Now we're going to fill in more turquoise between these lines. But leaving the paler on the top. So the top of the head looks paler because it's round. We want to try and make it look rounded. So the little, we do them like this, fading out towards the top. And then just dab them. And they're basically like little tiles. And leaving gaps between them. By showing paler on the back of the head because of the light from the window. Now what you can also do, you get a bigger brush, make sure it's clean, wash it in water, dry most of it off. I always have a wad of tissues by the side, by the way. And then you're going to pretend you're painting on the top of the head you're actually taking colour off. This is in watercolour. It won't work with all sorts of paints. It made the top paler. See, show the light shining on it. Like you see on the side of a fish, very shiny. I'm going to do similar with the moustache. Again, I'm dabbing that off because it looks stronger on my camera because it's wet. The camera picks up the light. Looks stronger than it actually is. So I'm going to use that clean brush. Whoop. Don't knock the camera over. Use that clean brush. Take some of the top off that has on the back here. So I'm actually taking paint off as well. You look at that brush now. So that's the thing about watercolor. You can put it on and you can take it off. Now we should do the same thing with all the feathers on the wings, but we're not going to have time to do that. So we'll just do some around the edges again to try and show that the wing is curved. So I'm just going to do it stronger at the bottom here. I'm doing the same thing, but smaller and smaller strokes to indicate the feathers. And I'll just dab off the strongest bits. Do the tail feathers completely. Also going over the wing tips, because all the feathers, even the under feathers, have a suggestion of orange and blue in them. You can't really see on this one. You can see the browny bits here in the blue. They're sort of undercolors, as it were. Before we do the breast, I'm going to rub out the strong line of the throat, make that, because of course it's fairly white. It wouldn't have a line just to make it softer. Because now I'm going to make the orange a bit browner. There are all sorts of reddy brown colors, like siennas. Different siennas and red browns. And in fact, younger kingfishers can be quite browny orange. So I'm putting a stronger color on. Not going to do any separate feathers here. It's going to be stronger at the bottom. It's also going to go over the blue underneath the feathers. As we go up the bird, this is getting lighter as the color runs out, as it were, in the brush. Put a bit more water on the brush, fading it into the throat and into the side. There's not a clear, doesn't suddenly go from orange to white. And on the side here is where the blue and the orange and everything join together. So we did a bit more. So I should have put it earlier along here. I'm going to use a clean brush again to blend them together here. So you haven't got the same hard line. And also a bit of the darker orangey red. Fading out. On the fan. So I'm fading that out, making that weaker. I'm putting this suggestion of the orange around the greens and the blues. Now, the final bit. Now, the final bit is a bit complicated because this is pure watercolor, which means there's no white paint in it. You see the white we have left. This is the paper. But if you look at a lot of kingfishers, you can see these little pale spots on them, which you can put on later if you want to do. And they need white gouache. Gouache is watercolor that is opaque. In other words, you can't see through it. It's solid watercolor. It's not transparent watercolor like this. So you can mix a blue and a white and do the little paler dots across the head and across the wing. What I'm going to do now is the final, which is a tricky bit for some, to put a bit of a shadow on. So I've got quite a weak color here, a weak bluey color. Goes on here. That's just to make it. So you've got something it's sitting on, and also goes down the front just down the front of the Kingfisher. I'll do that very quickly, but what you have to do you have to have another brush ready with clean water on it. I'll show you what I'm going to do. So watch the way I do it before you do it. This is a clear shadowy color. It's down here. See, it's quite weak. In fact, it's too weak. I have to do it stronger.